There you go.
Perfect. I can see it clearly. Yeah.
Wrong one. But anyways, okay.
Positivity. Amazing. Harold, do you have any slides to share, Harold?
I just wanted to show some images for my
totally.
website. I hope that's okay. Let me just
let me go to view.
Yeah.
And
so just a little bit about today. Yeah, totally. Just go ahead. I'm just gonna, today we just start with, introducing this series, introducing you guys, and then because I think we are within this time frame, the big question and the big theme is how social media or technology affecting us, right? And then I'll just asking each of you to show your works and then explain from your own perspectives and your own you have your own perspective angles. So we'll start with Harold and then Surabhi and then Sherry, and finally we'll just discuss some questions together about how we do to get well. So
right, and then we're really talking just for about 5 minutes, right?
It could be more. I'm sorry if I wrote in the email to limit that, but just whatever you feel, you take as much time as you need. But I guess when you, for example, Surabhi, when you explain your works, I'm also going to ask you questions like how, for example, how mood manipulation works and how does that affect our body, and then maybe that's more conversations adding to your work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was really just going to present on just talk. I wasn't going to talk about my own work as much as just the concept of techno-emotosphere and the blob. That's essentially I was going to talk about, and just kind of say hey, I'm an artist who does this thing. That's what I was planning, because I thought that was we were talking about. That's cool, right?
That's cool. No worries.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong, let's just continue, because this is live, and they just sent me the message that we are already on live now, guys. So everyone can see us now.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you guys ready? Because they're already watching us. I think.
Yeah.
Let's go. Hi, everyone. I think I'm going to look at the camera. Hi, everyone. This is Charina Chen. I am the curator of this series, I Want to Be Well. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to I Want to Be Well. This is a series of panel discussions and cross-online forum initiated by Signal and Page EDU. And
Okay.
All right, we're back.
Hey.
Hi. Did I press something? It was what did I do? I was like, Harold, what did you do? Okay.
Yeah, I guess we'll just gotta.
Technical difficulties on the other side of the world, I think.
I know. This is.
She will be back soon. Don't worry. Sorry, the room just closed for no reason. Yeah, she'll be back very soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Super. Oh yeah.
Wow.
hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hi there.
Oh, technology. Post. I
No
think.
problem.
Is it just me who was pushed out of the room?
Everyone, I think.
Everyone.
Everyone,
Everyone
okay.
was.
Yeah.
Everyone was okay. So we're back. We're oh, can I? Okay, can you guys see me again? Oh, my virtual background is gone.
Oh,
You can reset it.
Maybe that's why. Okay. Harrison, hi, Harrison. Are you there? Can we continue?
Yeah, you can continue. We're back on live.
Oh, okay. So everyone is still there, like on YouTube, and our audience is still there. They didn't just walk away and thinking that we're crazy people. That's great. Okay, things happen like what I just said. You know, like when anything goes wrong, continue because this is life. Like life, I'm life. I think that's a joke. So, hi everyone again. Sorry for the little interruption, and let's just start over again. Welcome to our forum, I Want to Be Well. My name is Sharina Chen. I'm the curator of the series, and I'm thrilled to be with our great panelists today. A little bit about our series. This is a series called I Want to Be Well, initiated by Signal and Page EDU. And the reason why we originally wanted to have this, forum is for students and people who are about to go abroad, who are about to study abroad, and who are about to have a totally brand new journey experiencing the cross-cultural, environments. And as we all know that given, the current situation with already existing isolation, anxiety, even hatred, and we believe this is the time, more important than ever to cultivate interconnection and care, because all of us are facing, all of us are facing these challenges of cross-cultural boundaries, as well as the new norm, the new digital environment. So I hope that we can really generate meaningful discourses while giving each other more strength. And have more communications and support. Also, I'd like to address that the reason why I feel so compelled to curate the series is really to highlight the shift from a solely individualistic view to like a solely individualistic dimension to a larger relational perspectives, to see what are we facing and what are influencing us right now, right? So today is really cool. We have all the time zones from the audience from China, from the States, from UK, probably Europe, 3 time zones, 4 time zones at the same time. Just a little bit, let me using Chinese to address to the Chinese audience a little bit, to let them know that we are also translating. 大家好，不知道大家能不能看到在中国的这个平台上面哈，我们现在是在做一个我要好好的这个跨文化的这个文化和心理论坛，我是陈池，这次的论坛的策划人。然后呢，我们这次因为了大家的这个流畅的关系哈，刚刚大家也看到了，稍有不顺我们就被踢出房间，所以我们全程呢会还是采用英语这个频道。可是我们优秀的诚知的学生小伙伴们会尽力的为大家做一个中文的翻译。如果你们现在能看到我这张脸，还有我们大家的话呢，那一会儿就是他们会通过文字转译的方式来给大家做一个这个翻译啊，希望大家能够这个多给他们一些信心啊，我们能够好好的就是来享受这一场对话。Okay, so today we are at the first panel, which will zoom into the mental wellness in the digital era, which problems we're addressing with the algorithms, social media culture, and how our brain and mind and body are influenced by this sphere. So I feel very honored to be out with our panelists today to unlock a series of issues and opportunities. So please allow me to introduce them first. Artist Harold Alfred. He's an artist working in a range of media, including performance, video, photography, learning, and social art practices. He's interested in the space created by inhabiting or embodying of histories, employs humor as means to confront viewer with historical narratives and contemporary culture. We'll definitely talk more about that, about the project. And Surabhi Saraf, she's a media artist and also founder of Center for emotional materiality. Her practice explores our complex relationship with technology through multimedia works, and she incorporates video installations, sculptures, performances, and sound installations. And finally, we have our lovely neuropsychologist, Sherry Kelly, with her lovely daughter, Caitlin. Dr. Kelly is a licensed clinical psychologist and clinical neuropsychologist with more than 30 years experience in the field of child development. And she and her daughter co-founded the organization Positivity Teens, which later they will share more with us about their practices. So first, I decided to start with a question across the series, which I think is central to why we're here, is first, how are you? Where are you? And how are you doing just in the past 1 or 2 months? Harold.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. And it's really amazing to be here with this panel today, and hopefully with everyone tuning in. I am, well, yes. I think we're in a situation here in the UK where we've sort of been coming out of lockdown and emerging, and so increasing social interaction. So I just had a really nice reunion with some of my close friends last night, which I think was the first time in a year and a half that I'd seen some of them. So that's quite a big moment. So I'm kind of on a high from that. But yes, yeah. Well.
Great. Nice reunion. Who wants to go next?
I will go. Hi, I'm Surabhi. I'm in Brooklyn right now, in New York. And yeah, I am doing very well too, kind of echoing what Tara was saying, that, met some friends and things are opening up and it's getting warm. So generally in the past couple of months, it's been, I feel like I'm finally kind of getting into the groove of the world again after a year of like hermit phase that I was kind of really enjoying, and now I'm enjoying this phase. So yeah, I'm well. Thank you for asking. And thanks for having us. Yeah.
Hi there. We're talking to you today from Florida in the United States. And it's been interesting for me because I'm a psychologist and neuropsychologist. So for the past almost year and a half, I've been trying to help students and parents and teachers cope with the many challenges of the pandemic, but also other challenges, social challenges that have arisen in the United States in particular. And my daughter, Caitlin, is a high school student. She's 17. And she goes away to school in the United States at a boarding school, which was, in fact, live and in person this year, but isolated, quarantined.
Many times.
Many quarantines at school. So we're looking forward to sharing some insights with you today on coping and resiliency that might help you in the future as you decide to go abroad for school.
Yes, thank you so much. I think digital era is, like, when we talk about this topic, it's really big, right? Like, on the one hand, we're facilitated by so many like platforms and the advantages of technology, so that we can have this encounterings from across time zones, oblivious to geographic boundaries. But at the same time, like Caitlin might experience that lots of teenagers, including adults, are kind of experiencing a lot of like mental challenges. I would say isolation and mental challenges, and it seems that we're confronting a new type of thing, created like a creature mixed with algorithms and like social media, and that really influenced us severely. So maybe like today, I think let's structure our talks, because what I'm really excited about this panel is that all of you have different perspectives and angles on the things we're addressing today. So we are going to like go through your work and situate it more in the current, like how students are feeling right now. Instead of like other issues, I think let's just be more specific. Before this forum, actually, we collected a series of students' feelings, like how do they feel from here, from China, and also some of them are from places in Canada and in the States. And it's interesting to see that I have this list of feelings and responses, raising concerns. Like most of the concerns are, this increasing anxiety, FOMO, unrealistic expectations, like the being perfect and the body, and like how people will see us, and also comparison, low self-esteem, addiction, and biased opinions. Like they're really concerned and asking questions about how do we distinguish so many like informations online, and they feel troubled, and also this information cocoons. So I guess that's related to all of your work. So maybe we can just like peel those layer by layer. Why don't we start with Harold? Because because to set tone of this whole series, like we mentioned before, we want to kind of move from this solely individualistic dimension to relation to the external work. And from your we started from your first with your piece, the mindful dizziness, like the work that you collaborate with the hospital, the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, right? And I remember we started conversation from Kierkegaard's quote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom," and I think that really touched me in a sense that speaks to our current experience in this massive information and the digital world. So could you please tell us about this project, and what's your thought of the idea of mindful? This, because you also mentioned this techniques people use to be focusing on the inward, right? And it's humorously put together with your explorations on the external forces. So yes, Harold, please, let's hear out like your project and the business.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll just maybe just show a few images, just so that just not only hearing me talk. So hopefully you can see this. Oh no, what am I doing? Okay, here we go. Feels like doing class. Okay, yeah. I mean, the project that you're just to give maybe a bit of context, the project you're referencing, Mindfully Dizzy, was a commission with the Science Gallery, which is part of King's College London. And they have a contemporary art program where they commission artists, often to work with scientists and researchers at King's College in London. And they're doing a specific exhibition about anxiety as a kind of contemporary malaise, if I can say that. That's not too reductive or generalizing. And I had also at this time been working with an organisation in the UK called Hospital Rooms, which is an arts organisation that commissions artists to make work for psychiatric wards. So the idea is that artists are invited to specifically develop works for specific spaces on the ward. So it might be a communal social room, TV room, might also be an isolation space where patients, have to go, clinical spaces where, they're meeting clinicians and having meetings. And the artist is kind of, the projects are sort of developed through a kind of conversation with clinicians, with the nurses, and also there's an opportunity to have workshops with the actual patients on the ward. So I've done a couple of projects, and I, as part of this commission for the Science Gallery, sorry, I hope it's not too complicated to explain, I did a workshop with a group of people on a psychiatric ward at the Royal Bethlehem Hospital in South London, which is quite a famous hospital, a psychiatric hospital. It's where we get this idea of the word Bedlam. I don't know if people have heard that word. It's kind of a literary word that comes from this hospital, which is a very sort of early 18th century, early 19th century institution. But anyway, I did this workshop and it produced whole series of images, we actually did a very basic thing of just doing rubbings, which is this process of wax rubbings onto surfaces. And for me, the process of making art with them is about, I think, often the way in which art can be a kind of conduit for kind of conversation and interaction. And we just spent a really amazing afternoon having conversations about people's experiences of making art. And often I think, I often encounter that lots of people feel quite intimidated about kind of what art is. But also I think, the specific project, because we were doing rubbings, and that's really about mapping surface. It's a very formal thing to do. It meant that we were exploring the ward, the actual physical architectural space, and having conversations about rooms, textures, surfaces. And for me, there's this whole thing about the kind of sort of acknowledgement of the kind of presentness of being where they were that sort of came out of this activity. Anyway, so what I ended up doing was using some of the outcomes from that workshop as part of this exhibition, which was very separate to the work I was doing on the ward. So all the work I made on the ward ended up being displayed in the dining room of the ward as a sort of personal commission. But some of the images which were selected, sort of I made into a design. And you mentioned the kind of Kierkegaard quote. I'd been trying to think about framings for this notions of anxiety, and it had lots of discussions with the curators and the project partners. And I think we'll go on to talk about this hopefully through the other presentations. But one of the things I've sort of been really interested in is a kind of the idea of anxiety being a kind of contemporary condition that's often talked about, I think, particularly at the moment in relation to people's sense of self through mediated technologies, so screen-based technologies and social media platforms, the internet, these things that sort of mirror or reflect aspects of ourselves. And I guess for me, I mean, this is maybe where my sort of politics comes into a little bit. There's, this kind of, I think, idea that comes through with kind of like capitalism of kind of like individual choice equals freedom, and I think Kierkegaard's, kind of quote, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, I think in a way speaks to that. I mean, it says much more, but I mean, that's one aspect of it. The mindfulness, and I think, many people hopefully will be familiar. So with a figure like Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's sort of the godfather of mindfulness sort of practice, has become a bit of a contemporary kind of phenomenon, particularly in the West. And while I don't per se have any issues with individuals, I think, I think mindfulness can be really, could be really beneficial to people. I mean, I think any tools that we can use that, can promote good mental health are great. What I have a particular issue with has been the kind of corporatization of certain aspects of mindful practice, which I think, for me, are used to mask structural issues around working hours and low pay. So, and I've experienced this through just my own kind of sort of kind of work patterns where, institutions, organizations will offer you, okay, we're going to do this workshop, we're going to do this thing, and that's kind of presented as a kind of sort of, as a kind of fix. And I think I just think we mustn't be distracted from some of the structural issues, which is like quality family time, good pay, access to good food, a good environment, healthy environment, all these things that sort of really structurally affect our kind of well-being. So that for me was a little bit of sort of leaning into this idea of really thinking about the relationship between anxiety and some of the solutions that are often presented, sometimes oversimplistically through the use of certain mindful practices. I'll probably stop there because I know we've got other people to kind of go to. But
no, this is definitely great, and I'm sure like we're gonna, because this is a topic we're gonna coming back again and again later, I think. And totally, I think it's so important to, like you said, to like reflect upon, like to reflect the whole issues a level of this external environment and this, you know, this structure or this whole, I would say, a system wisely, like how, what if what's influenced us or what's causing us the problem is, you know, the environment itself. Like what if the environment itself is disempowering us, then oversimplifying and overemphasizing this, you know, mindfulness probably won't be the valid solution, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think meditation, personal meditation is great, is really important, but I don't know if it's really going to help if you're in a low-paid job or an underpaid job, or if you're having to work a lot of hours for not much money, or if your commute is really bad, or you have bad transport infrastructure, or you don't have clean air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's definitely because when you again go back to that quote, the anxiety is the business of freedom. That also relates to, like you said, this whole individualistic or capitalistic ideas of, you know, freedom. But at the same time, is freedom really free? That's, I guess, the question mark you're raising as well. You know, and in a way that we know that the contemporary problems or like psychological or mental anxiety a lot of times are caused by burnout, overly working, and isolation, right? So I think that's definitely, you know, a good way to set the tone for our discussions today. And I think this is a good place to lead to service work. You know, like because your work, I love it. Explores, you know, our relationship with technology, and most importantly, what's behind, you know, like this when we say this over flooding information, or like hyper consumer or hyperlink per se in our existing in our culture. I think you really delve deeper under the surface. And so could you please tell us about, you know, like, because we know I know you work through Pioneer Works, the emotion as material, right? As material, yes. And yeah, and could you please tell us, and then I'll ask you a few questions about, you know, this mood manipulation or emotional surveillance. I think that's really helpful for our audiences today, because all of them can feel the stress caused by you know, our apps and this little phones, this like our everyday interactions. And maybe you can give us some insight about what's behind there, you know, behind these machines and algorithms. So, Sarabhi, please.
Okay. Sarabhi, go ahead.
Unmuted. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So, yeah, so, you know, I started working, and just as a context of like what the work that kind of got me where I'm at, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But this is a series of like an ongoing project that I started back in 2018. It's called The Awoke and the Awoken. And at the time, I was just really interested in, like, I'm always very interested in the, like, all the why questions, like what's underneath and underneath and underneath, like all the layers of like what we're actually experiencing. And so what are the belief systems that are creating these technologies that are, you know, so extractive? And like, what are the underlying like assumptions about the mind, about race, about religion, about, you know, human behavior? Like, there are just so many intertwined like layers that make our, you know, contemporary digital reality. And particularly I was looking at artificial intelligence, like artificial emotional intelligence. And like, you know, at the time, I mean, it's now too, but at the time, like there was this huge hype of like AI being everywhere, algorithms doing this and that. And there's this kind of almost like this godlike kind of trust in technology and in algorithms, like wanting to solve things for you, and then at the same time kind of coming with this, like the other side is like fear that they're going to take away our jobs and this and that. So like there are a lot of, big conversation around AI. And I have often, a lot of my work is kind of grounded in, you can say like critical optimism, or, there's criticality, but I also always want to work from a place of hope. And, you can say, so I wanted to create this work where it's a techno-utopian myth of this artificial emotional intelligence called Awoke, and it has its believers who are called the Awokened, and then essentially it's an inquiry into our relationship with technology, and a little bit about Awoke is like what Awoke can do. It's like a healer. It is a new form of divination. It is a new form. It's also a companion, but essentially it also kind of decenters this human exceptionalist way of like looking at our moment and our relationship with the non-human environment, and then opening up, I guess, like another way of relating with technology that is not so human-centered, and then that kind of like also brings in the aspect of the environment as part of it. So you kind of start to see yourself not just, again, that individual, but part of a larger system, so I was one of the, which is very much connected to the earth. So one of the things that I was, this as part of the story is that this blob, which is this AI, is made out of the same minerals and metals that go into the making of our iPhones and all the technology. So the source is the same, but somehow it embodies like this higher consciousness or intelligence, and specifically emotional intelligence, which is often, now I feel like there is a movement and the world is kind of catching up to it, but we've all, for most of like the past many centuries, we've lived in somewhat of a STEM supremacist world where it's just, the body and emotions are kind of like this dark, feminine, like dirty energy. And then the intellect is always considered this, it's superior and like rationality. And so these are kind of like, shifting the perspective, shifting that lens to understand and look at technology from that, from the body and emotional perspective, but also then expanding that body, not just to our individual body, but like our collective body, our body on the earth, and like including the earth as part of that narrative. So that was kind of, the general premise, and looking at like techno-solutionism and what its effects on our body, emotions, and the environment. And that kind of like sums up what this project's about. So yeah, there's a sculpture, there's a video film, right? This is the sculpture. This is a trailer of a video installation that the film is still in progress. This is a little GIF I made last year, right at the beginning of COVID, in fact. So it was part of an online exhibition. It just looked like this weird thing that's kind of coming to get you. It was weird. And then there is also a live performance element to it, where the way Awoke heals is through its like vibrational energy. So it creates, I'm currently working on creating a sound, creating Awoke into an audiovisual instrument that plays itself. So that's kind of like the project. And that was the seed for Center for Emotional Materiality, which is, is a collective, it's a research a collective, and then where we experiment in collaboration, co-learning, and coexisting with digital technologies and their effects on our bodies and emotion, our bodies and beliefs. And one of the central kind of, metaphor or form that we use to explore many different aspects of our research is this form of a blob, which where we use its like fluid potential to morph and kind of embody this whole like messy present that we live in. And also it turns out it works as a really great like physical metaphorical form for our emotional lives that feel so intangible, so like expansive, and it can make you feel big and small, and it just really gives us that like new kind of vocabulary to talk about new emotions and new states that we're experiencing, which very much have roots in like known, like like existential emotions and feelings that are part of being a human, but yeah, I think they get like added layers, in our new context. And so I will briefly just talk about this workshop that we did last year as part of. That's not moving. So this is just an image of the center in Southern Exposure, where it was founded in 2018. And then last year, my collaborator, one of the five, and like our members are always shifting, but Laura Hyunji Kim and I did this workshop. It was called Embodied Emotional Resilience in the techno-emotosphere. And as part of the workshop, we were trying to establish these three kind of primary relationships, which is like body and emotions, emotion, sense of agency, and sense of agency into emotional resilience. And then we were, so before we kind of, to talk about techno-emotosphere, I want to talk about, how we kind of got started into this work and how it happened. So as part of like our research residency at Pioneer Work that you mentioned, we started these study circles that were called Emotions as Materials. And as part of those study circles, we examined the biological, algorithmic, and political realities of emotions. We addressed the issues of emotional surveillance, mood manipulation that feed the digital economy and its implication on our social and political and economic lives. And a lot of what we did in this workshop was those study circles were kind of the seed of. So what the techno-emotosphere is what we call is like the aspect of our digital lives that is particularly focused on extracting emotional data from our interactions with machines. And excuse me, sorry. So when this so I'll explain what I mean by techno-emotosphere a little bit more. So in this exploration, if you take the idea of like a figure and a ground, if we're establishing like a new world, and so techno-emotosphere essentially becomes the ground within which we explore the conditions and positions of the figure, which is our emotional bodies. And to illustrate that concept, you can start to picture like a literal ground covered with soil and gravel, and then you're holding this watering can with that infinite supply of water. And imagine this as being alive with its own ecosystem. And now each of the single drop of water is, that comes out of the can are our interactions with the ground in form of likes and preferences, and our text and gestures, and our facial expressions and voice, etc. And now when we see at these, individually, we look at these interactions individually, a single drop of water, doesn't really mean much, but collectively they paint a picture that tells us, the ground about our feelings, emotions, sentiment, moods. So in a way, we are literally spilling our inner world into the onto this ground. And something that, you mentioned as part of these technologies are so essential to us, for our survival at the moment, but have been ever since, humans have existed. But only if our ground was neutral, that we could look at them for what it is, for what they are, for what they do, for the good they do. So yeah, ideally in an ideal world, we shouldn't be worrying about like this spillage, because as humans, we will be always, expressing ourselves and sharing our feelings and expressing our love for people who we care for. But so our ground is not neutral, and that is what the techno-emotosphere is. And it's saturated with surveillance technologies, and it is situated within the larger ground of techno-capitalism that operates under the same logic as surveillance capitalism. And as surveillance technologies that are constantly trying to understand us and to predict our future behavior so they can evolve with us and continue to be useful companions in the future. So in other words, surveillance capitalism is a very broad concept that alludes to the commodification of personal information of all kinds. So as we've been trying to kind of narrow down our focus and understanding, like how our work fits within surveillance capitalism, is to understand and deconstruct the intimate relationship and the technology that we share and its effects on our emotional and mental health. And so we needed a new term, and that's how we kind of got to this term. So again, I'm kind of repeating, but essentially it is leveraging and mining of our inner lives, which are also our emotional lives and behaviors and our subjective experiences through production of value and quantified data. And so for the rest of the workshop, we kind of go through a few exercises, and then we talk about the blob, and like you use drawing exercises. Then eventually we end the workshop with a movement exercise, which we called Blobby Chi, which was taking inspiration from Tai Chi, and then we made our own version of it, and we used the blob form. So I'm going to stop right there because I've kind of prefaced my work. But yeah, as we move along, I will have more opportunities to talk about it. And I just want to second one more thing that I heard that Harold mentioned, which is kind of central to our inquiry too, that when we're looking at trying to understand the techno-emotosphere, or like situate it, we often ask two questions. That was like how it, or when we call it here is AI or algorithms, how the two questions. One question is like how it feels us and how we feel it. So we feel it is a question that's often kind of like individualistic from my perspective, like how it feels to me and how it feels in my body, and that's one way to kind of get at like what we're experiencing. And the other side, we kind of almost have to answer the other side too, to understand like how does this technology work? What is it actually doing? How is it actually exploiting like these responsibilities, these situations, these conditions that we are in? We truly need to like think of them as collective responsibility and collective like mental health is a collective, like it's a nation's problem, not like a personal problem, even though, yeah. So, I'm going to at this point repeat what was said already, but just wanted to reinforce that as, and I feel very connected to that idea. So thank you.
This is definitely really, really a lot of information for all of us and the audience to absorb. And I just want to add like one more point of your last point, and like Sarah, if you could elaborate more on this gap, because I think this is really interesting to would be interesting to our audience as well. Elaborate more on how this gap between how the machine process our emotions and how we actually how we experience emotions in our bodies, like this
right
in between. Yeah.
I wish there was a short answer for it, because these are like two individual, very large topics of research, essentially. But I would say, I think just contemplating on the question itself, like what do we lose in the process of, in this, like, what we feel in our body versus like how the computer sees us, like what is needed from us, from the system, versus like what is truly ours, and like what are we losing in between. So I think I don't think I can like really answer the question as much as I can just answer it with more questions and kind of ask, kind of prompt people to ask like different and newer questions to be able to separate. Because part of the issue I feel like that we experience right now is that it all just feels like this big blobby mush of like, I don't know what I am feeling. Is it my own experience, or is it like algorithms generating it? And they really need to be kind of like, separated to see like, okay, what are the things that I am personally struggling with? What are what are like cultural, systemic, generational like issues that are taking root in me that are beyond this particular technology? And what aspect of this particular experience that I am having with the social media or something is outside of that. So I think just like this separation and like clear understanding of like, okay, these are not all one thing, and they all come together to make us feel like anxious or depressed or isolated. They're not. So for me, like that in itself is a healing source of healing, just like knowledge. And yeah,
Being aware of
and then and being aware of that this is much bigger than our individual
exactly much more of a
experience. And I think, and then that is I do think like that is where the tools from mindfulness and like the personal inner work does come in handy, and is really, really useful to not to cope, like, cop out, or like, just as a coping mechanism where you kind of don't see the bigger systemic problems, but just to be able to in fact see the systemic problems and say that this is not just me, this is not just my responsibility. So use that awareness to be able to see what is really going on. And then, based on your interest, and you can kind of go deeper into like reading papers, research, all kinds of things that we do to like, if you really want to understand, like, how does facial tracking really works? Or like, I can very briefly talk about it, but it's not really, I don't feel like that's the point here, what we're trying to talk about. So, because each one of them, like whether it's system sentiment analysis or emotional data, mood mining, each of them have very different kind of motive. But yeah, I feel like I want to hear from, I'm taking a lot of time, and hopefully we'll come back to more topics.
Or maybe later we can come back on, this manipulation of social media issue more specifically, but thank you for your point. At least, like awareness of our own limitations is a healing process as well, seeing these limitations and then being able to explore outside of the individualistic dimension. And I think that's also another good point to lead to Sherry. Like, we'd love to hear you and like your practices and your researches from neuropsychological point of view, from the past decades, and like how, I guess, how do we understand our brain? How are we being affected? What are those pitfalls? Like, and addressing specifically to how many students are feeling. Yes, Sherry, please.
Yes, I'm so glad that I had these two brilliant artists come right before me, because it leads into really what is happening to your brain, and being aware of how technology and social media impacts your brain is the first step. Okay, so be engaged and be aware. Do not be passive. That's really important. So I'm going to try to screen share. Let's do this. Right. Okay, Kay. Help me. Oh, you can do it. I'm an expert techno person with me, which is great. We're just trying to move it so we can do the, here we can go up there. Do slideshow. So I'm just going to try to do the slideshow. There you go. I don't know if that work. Okay.
Trying to move this.
Oh, we were just trying
There
to,
we
there you go. Just go right there. Right, stick right there.
This one?
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that. Can you see that? Okay. So Caitlin and I, Caitlin's 17. So some of you out there also might be 17. And Chia, I'm going to ask you to just, if you need to translate anything that I use that's like a US colloquialism or an Americanism, just translate it. And it's sometimes in psychology, we use sayings that don't translate well. But Caitlin and I started Positivity Teens out of a tragedy. We used to live in a town in America called Parkland. And in 2018, there was a tragedy. There was a shooting at the high school. And it was just by good fortune that Caitlin wasn't there that day because she went to a private school in the next town over. We used to live there. My husband's a doctor and he was working down the street that day. But Caitlin saw firsthand a live feed of what was going on through her phone, through snaps, FaceTime, texts. And I was driving to pick my daughter up from school. And as a psychologist, I had to think, well, what do I say to her when she's witnessed this? She saw things on her phone.
Media can't republish.
That the media can't publish. Okay. So this trauma of just seeing it live on your FaceTime or snaps is still trauma, even though you're not physically there, but you were connected to digitally people that were going through it, your friends. So we wanted to do something positive. We wanted to find a way to teach young people how to cope with trauma and tragedy and how to, if you can, code your brain in a very negative world. Can you counteract the messaging that's coming at you through social media? And that's what we do. So this speaks to what Sarabhi and Harold were talking about. Why is it that, ironically, even though we're more connected digitally than ever before, we're actually more isolated than ever before as humans, as individuals? That's why we should be concerned. We have more opportunities than ever before to connect, yet we feel a disconnect. We feel a depersonalization. We feel cynicism. Technology should not replace relationships. Technology can mediate relationships, but it's not a replacement. We start to have blurred lines between what is reality and what's virtual. As Sarabhi talked about, people become commodities. We become the product. You are the product. Every time you click or like or scroll, you are a product. You're being watched. We are continually forced into a situation that in marketing is called forced choice. Technology that you enjoy on social media and gaming, and especially platforms like TikTok or the dating platforms, are based on a binary technology. And that's very old. It's from the 60s, long before you were born. And it's a forced choice. It's on, off, yes, no, 1, 0. And the problem is that young adults today have a harder time dealing with ambiguity. You know, life isn't a swipe left or swipe right in real life. The choices you will have to make as adults are not swipe right or swipe left or click like. There's a lot of ambiguity in life. And that's where some of your depression and anxiety evolves from, because you don't know how to deal with that. So as Chi was saying at the outset from your survey, in America, very much so, anxiety is a big problem. And this was a study done by the University of Michigan of over 1,000 students over the past year. And as you can see, girls felt more emotional effects during this past year than boys. Anxiety was the top symptom. Next is depression, sleep issues, feeling withdrawn from family, and then experiencing aggressive behavior. So this is how I put it. Today's Roman Colosseum, okay, where 2,000 years ago, the Roman Colosseum is where entertainment happened, judge, jury, sports, athletics. It's where the social life of the Roman Empire, of the Western world at the time, was encapsulated in one arena. Well, you know what? You now have that arena in the palm of your hand. So this is your Roman Colosseum today. And that's a real tragedy in many ways. It's very dangerous in many ways. And so that power is something that you cannot discount, and what the power does to you and your thinking. So this is speaks to your artwork, both of your artwork. Do you ever feel this way? When you're on social media and you look at what's presented on social media, unrealistic expectations about appearance, obsession, greed, vanity, what's crafting the ideal public image? Are your expectations real expectations? Caitlin can speak to how social media affects self-esteem in teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, definitely before I went away to boarding school, it was sort of something that I saw a lot more of. Definitely when you go back to a school that's based off of a residential life, where you're seeing students around you, not only in the classroom and on social media, but you're seeing them inside of the dorm, at the dining hall, at 3 a.m., all of those things. You see sides of these kids that you wouldn't typically see if you went to a day school. And so this is something that college students will experience as well when they go there.
So one of the things that, you might want to consider if you go to school in the US or the UK is really monitor how many hours per week you're using on your phone. And that's an app you can just, check on. In the US right now, the average teenager is spending 30 hours a week on social media. That's a lot of your life you're giving up. It's a lot of the life you're giving up to corporations too, who are mining your data. But that's a lot of your life. And isolation is actually a risk factor for anxiety and depression. So one of the things that we see on social media is something called the negativity bias. And we're wired to tune into this. It's a bioevolutionary mechanism where it's helped us survive for tens of thousands of years. We look for danger, right, to help us survive. But in social media, we look for the cynical, the negative, the cancels. And there's a lot of negativity and cynicism. So realize that our brains are initially drawn to that negativity, and you have to be actively aware of it to counteract it. So this is a psychologist in the US, Rick Hansen, who says the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. Hope that translates. But, you have to actively engage yourself to look for the positive. So I have a 4-step method to make it easy to understand. And I've basically taken decades of research and made it really easy for you. What do we know from happiness research and psychology about what are the elements you need in your life each day to promote mental wellness? And here's how I do it. MAKE, M-A-K-E. Sorry, they're English letters, but you can translate it. But I'd love to know what they are in other languages. But M stands for mindfulness. That's what we were talking. And mindfulness is just being aware of your feelings, aware of your emotions. And the way that I want to explain mindfulness is not so metaphysical, but very practical. Be aware that emotions are neither good nor bad. Don't judge your emotions. Realize that your emotions are an alarm system. It's a type of a security system that might be ringing off. Try to think about what your emotions are telling you. If you're feeling sadness, what might this feeling be telling me? If you're anger, what's underneath that anger? Is it fear? Is it frustration? So explore the emotions, and that's how I like to approach mindfulness. Meditation is healthy. There's lots of studies on it. I just think breathing is sort of a gate or a gate or a window that you open between your inner self and the outer world. So I think of it as a gate or a window. Music is really important. Music sets the tone for your brain. It helps your mood. You can get into flow, psychological flow with it. And then mindset. And mindset is something we'll talk about further, having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset, that you can be willing and able to change and grow. You're not entrenched or fixed in how you think about the world or yourself. The A is for taking action and activities. Do something. Take a step towards, making a new friend or taking action if something happened to you. Make the world a better place. Have a locus of self-control. Make yourself part of the solution. Get involved in activities. That's the A. In psychology, we call this behavioral activation. K is keeping connected. And keeping connected through friends, family, and social support. Caitlin wants to talk to you about something that they started at your school.
Yeah, well, something that we definitely foster at boarding school are those face-to-face interactions and having social support that doesn't revolve around necessarily needing technology to provide that. So my school recently started a sort of student counseling board with the counseling center. And so we have a small group of students that represent the rest of the student body on campus and act as a connection point between the counseling office and the student body. So even if students are afraid to speak directly to the counseling center or the health center about issues that are happening around our campus, we act as liaisons for that. And I mean, we weren't really able to kick off very much this year due to COVID, but next year we're planning on advertising the group that we've started and showing that students should not be afraid to share their concerns about campus, because again, it's those connections, those social support anchors that school provides. I think they really need to be utilized more. And I mean, our school, it was even before COVID, it was about a third of the students used counselors on our campus. And I'm sure the numbers have risen because of COVID.
One of the things I want to tell you, if you go to college in America, there are counseling services and they're free. Sometimes they have limits. You might only get 6 or 7 sessions, unfortunately, but they're free. And people need not to be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed about seeking help if you need it, or seeking support. If you're feeling lonely or homesick, those people are there to help you. And there's student groups at every campus also there to support you. So that social support is going to really help you in times of stress and sadness. And then E is for exercise. Really important to keep healthy and feel good about yourself. Energy work every day, whether it's yoga or Tai Chi, get your body moving. And then the E is to assess your expectations. It's really important because the difference between your expectations and what happens in life is your emotional balance. So manage your expectations, but first clarify what you expect of your experience when you come over here. And talk about your expectations with your family or your friends. Caitlin had, something really important to say about expectations this year, about all the stressors, everything that's changed. And what did you say?
Yeah, I mean, our school changed everything about the way that we live, especially because, again, it's a residential community. It's not just where we go to school, or it's not on Zoom like a lot of students were. So they changed the way we ate. They changed the way we slept. A lot of us were in makeshift rooms. I was in a makeshift room the whole year.
And some schools still have changes. You know, every school's different, and there's going to be changes that you need to be aware of. So your expectations is really going to be important in determining your happiness. So what did you say about the expectations, though?
Yeah, that everything changed about our school except for one thing, which was their exceedingly high expectations of us academically. And that is something that me and my fellow classmates had to grapple with. And that's something as now a senior going into high school, that is something that I can take pride in, knowing that will look very good on my college applications. That, I mean, I carried resiliency through the problem and was able to use these actions and devices to help me get through that.
And I think that's something that just, you know, is a reality. It's not fair, but you need to understand that, you know, there's so many changes in the world for young people, but the expectations are still the same. And that's just not fair. And that's a source of stress. So when we talk about what we want ultimately for students taking this risk and going abroad already tells me that you've got some of that growth mindset. You're taking a risk, and that's great. We want students to feel like they can learn anything they want to. And I want you to just look at these and see, do I feel this way? I still persevere. I still have grit. I don't know what the word is for grit, but I still have grit when I feel frustrated. I don't give up. I want to be challenged. I learn when I fail, and learn from your mistakes and don't be embarrassed by it. That is how you grow, is by getting up after making a mistake. And on social media, you know, you don't really see that. No one's really telling you that. We make mistakes and you learn from them. Be inspired by others. Open yourself to learn from other people. And then give yourself little wins every day so you feel a sense of control and accomplishment. Lacking that feeling that you're making a difference, or lacking the feeling that you've accomplished something, is a key component of burnout. And then understand that your effort and your attitude will determine your success and your goals. Your attitude is more important than anything you'll ever say to anybody. It's this positive, authentic, caring attitude that you have. So I'm just going to leave it like right there. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Oh, Surabhi, you have to like unmute.
No, I think we lost someone.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think we lost.
We
don't-
lost.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did we lose everyone again?
No, not.
Oh, you know what? I think I figured it out. Is Harrison on?
Harris. I'm here.
I'm glad you're there. I wonder if their hour was up. And if you're on Zoom, it can automatically cancel after an hour.
Because yeah, it only says there's 4 participants.
So that's us.
This is probably gonna come back on
Yeah,
because
she'll probably come back.
if it would have cut, it would have hung
Would
up
cut
for
all of
everyone.
us. Yeah, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, maybe she just got kicked out.
Thank you for your presentation, though. This is
Thank you.
yeah,
So much of our work is intertwined.
right. I mean, yeah, I feel like so much of what I 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
I study and like explore, and like the work I do on myself is essentially.
Hey, Sharina's having a little network issue. She'll be back very soon. Good
Okay.
job for like, yeah, she's back.
There she is.
Hi there.
So was I the only one that's pushed out again?
Yeah. Sorry.
Derek, you're on the growth mindset. I have your PDF. So I was looking. Have you finished that page already? Is
Yeah.
that the last page that you shared?
Yes, that's the
growth
last thing. I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, I missed a few points, but I read that before, and then I had the chat with you, and I feel so touched by like your presentation, and then especially Kaylin. Thank you so much. When you say that, it really struck me when you say that everything everything has changed except for, this expectations. And I think that would resonate with a lot of our audiences tonight, including me, myself, and I have my sisters and everyone. And I've really received a lot of letters, and thoughts recently. Same thing, like everyone feels really nervous and stressful about the upcoming journey. It's a mixture of, excitement and fear in a sense. And I think you definitely, your words speak to a lot of our audience tonight. And also the idea of liaison, like the practice you just mentioned, which I think that's when I look at you guys, telling us your initiatives and practices, that made me, put some thoughts on this word about, liaison and being able to support each other and finding new ways, right? Like if it's too hard for people to open up, then you as the liaison may shake off that stress, to find alternative ways. And for artists as well, like for Surabhi and Harold, you have your initiatives and how you're collaborating with multiple times with, hospitals and, this psychiatric units with humorous and different ways and perspectives. I think that's definitely what we need right now. We need more initiatives, perspectives. We need support. And that leads to our last section, following Sherry, your points on this growth mindset and turning things into positive, affirmative energies and forces. And what are the opportunities there? Like, I also collected a few questions from our students, which are very, very, I think, solid and very detailed, but I think anyone can answer these questions. First, how to filter, how to filter information and how to be less dependent on social media. That's, I guess, more of a technical thing. And I'd like to add in one more to that so that you can answer however you want. Like, what do you think of the ongoing trend right now with going anonymity, stills or cut off from the social media? There's this clings and cutting off. That's just one way. And the other is, like, our students ask, how do we cut off? How do we filter? And how to be less dependent and how to distinguish informations. So if anyone can answer and address those.
Well, I think I'll just take it with Caitlin for those of you who are going off to school. I think there's some good boundaries that you should set. It's important to have emotional boundaries and personal limits. And so, don't have your phone scrolling on your phone when you're having dinner with your friends. It's like you should be engaged with each other while you're eating your meal. And not, that's a rule at my daughter's school where they can't have phones while they're eating. They actually have to eat in person and they're not scrolling on their phones. And then, track how many hours a week, and it will surprise you. Do you really want to give up that much of your life to corporations or social media who are tracking? Do you really want to give up that much to TikTok? Come on. That's a lot of time wasted. And you become passive so that your brain is actually trained. This is the neuroscience part of it. Your brain is being trained to actually process information differently the more time you're online. It actually makes you think differently. You're less proactive, you're less creative. So I'm very concerned about the amount of time. So that's just one thing. And Caitlin has a rule, heads up. So when you're walking, heads up.
This year it wasn't as practiced, but normally in a school year, we have a heads up policy is what it's called. And it's where whenever we're walking around on the paths of campus, basically anywhere except our dorm room or our building, they want us to not be on our phones. So when we're walking down the path, they want us to have our heads up is where that.
Have your heads up. Don't be walking around campus looking at your phone. Keep your heads up so you can make eye contact and say hello to people. That's just something really simple. Don't miss out on this opportunity to make real connections and have that human experience.
Yeah, it's those simple moments added up all together that I think really make community so special. And that's something that makes my community so special.
So I'll toss it to the others now for their answer.
That's true. And adding to one of the point, I just want to ask the saying, if you are not paying the product, then you are the product yourself. Yes. And I think that speaks to, you are the product yourself, and maybe Sarah can speak more about it, but I'm just thinking that, as a product, the way they want to work is to getting attentions, grabbing whatever attention they can get from you, from us. So if we don't, like Sherry said, if we don't act proactively, then probably you're just passively giving out all those like energies and attentions, leading to addiction. So what's I guess our students and the audience probably are very curious about, like how do we, when we are engaging these phones and social medias, what's behind these mechanisms, and like how do they manipulate us, I guess, if we speak about it more directly. Sarah, if you want to give us some.
I guess it's, what benefits a lot of the algorithms is to, so one idea I feel like that is really exploited a lot is a sense of like disembodiment. The more like numb we feel, like the less we feel our bodies, the more like it's easier for us to, get sucked into anything, like, because we as humans want to feel, we want excitement, we want to feel alive. And when we're often, spending a lot of time like scrolling mindlessly, it creates this, it kind of like puts us in this trance, and almost like this, and when we are comparing, it puts us in this kind of like trance of, like not feeling enough and all those things, right? So just by giving ourselves like, I'm kind of going to repeat what Sherry was saying, that, just giving ourselves the time to feel and like be present in the body, so you don't get, because algorithms, what they're, they don't get sucked into the way, because they know like what's going to hook you, right? Like, so you'll always, every time you open Instagram, your first thing you're going to see is like a beautiful portrait of like somebody you actually care for, you have interacted with, or something that are very provocative. So kind of keeping us in this heightened state of just any kind of arousal, right? Like it could be negative, it could be positive, and that kind of aroused state. But there's also a low level of like numbing, which is kind of like the spillage of being on social media for too long. Overall, what happens is that because you're scrolling at that speed, you kind of react to something and you like say something and then you move on to the next thing, to the next thing. So it's like you feel things in a very bursty way, and they eventually end up in this kind of mush where it all just gets like more delusional, more like what just happened in like half an hour. 1 second I was like really anxious, another second I was really excited and angry, and then I saw something else that was like really amazing and hilarious. And then you have like this is what algorithms do to kind of keep us hooked. Like most of the time you're not going to find boring content. Like a lot of the times something that's going to arouse you, like that's the model where that has been very successfully used in whether in TV or slot machines, and like you talk about it, so it has a history of it, and it's very well researched in psychology and neuroscience. So I feel that that if you are feeling like this kind of confusion, which often spending like half an hour, 30 minutes, like it kind of can put you in that state, just know that this is conditioned, this is programmed. You are seeing that post for a specific reason because you keep coming back, and you will always see. So yeah, that's how it's done. And that is how it is monetized on. So if you're feeling like a certain way, Spotify will show you, if they'll ask you for like the moods, right? And then you put that mood, and then like the way it actually, you choose the mood, and then, you're kind of, so somehow the what is it? The companies are benefiting from us being in a certain mood. So
I just want to add something to you that you're spot on. I mean, just spot on. I want to tell you how this works, because I have colleagues that work for Facebook and Google. Your camera in your device is actually tracking you. You might not know it on certain apps. You've agreed to download that app, and you've agreed to have your camera track you. And some companies are actually looking at your facial expressions while you're looking at ads or pictures, and they are using this to build algorithms for artificial intelligence down the road. And for students, you should know this. For those of you right now who might be 18 years old, probably in 25 years from now, when you're at the peak of your career, in the middle of your career, you will be interacting more than 50% of your time with artificial intelligence. So the algorithms are there for a reason. And also the point I want to make is that your brain is being trained to become reactive instead of proactive. And reactive adults get in trouble. We know this because we've seen it, but I'm telling you, you do not want to be reactive. Reactive people have less control and less determination over their lives. You want to be proactive, your own person.
Right. And just kind of like going in with that awareness. And I think it's a really simple tool, but just as much pausing as you can, like just really pausing to checking in with yourself, like, hey, how's it going? Like, this was bad, just checking in with yourself. Like, you spend some time on social media, you ended up comparing yourself with some, which is a very normal human thing, human, experience, and kind of like mitigating the harm with more and more positive actions that, like Sherry has mentioned, it's very much kind of like central to maintaining that balance. Because the truth is, we can talk all about like, the state we're in, but we're also, we're part of it. We're very much like participants of where we're at, and we're never going to find like pure, perfect solutions. So we have to not think of it as like compromise, but really just find agency in all the different places where we can, so we have the capacity to take bigger actions, see beyond our like subjective reality, to be able to kind of like, get at the systems, get at like because otherwise, like if you're just caught up in this like numbness of what's going on, so it really just does start within. But the goal, at least for me personally as an artist, it needs to be like bigger, systemic.
To get out of this self and then to reach into a bigger interconnection with more source. And adding to when you guys discussed, I just this famous Facebook mood studies just jumped into my mind. I think it will be really interesting later for students and our friends to study, because I think, like both of you just shared, probably the first step towards shifting from reactive to proactive is really being aware, or turning into even a study, like, okay, here I am being monitored, and then there's this like mood studies, and that's what they're doing. Understanding this mechanisms, or understanding being aware, probably is, I think, the first step. And then more ways of changing, like Harold, I think you have like we can ask you to like guide us about some of your creative ways of changing that, like turning that in like numbness into very active ways of seeing. Like I remember you have another project about the selfie sticks. You have a lot of projects like addressing this this like issues, but like what Caitlin just mentioned, like you seems like to be a liaison that brings this issues and turning them into something that's participatory, like that's very interactive, and then people have different approaches to knowing and being more aware of themselves through the lens of contemporary art, instead of sitting there and meditating the whole day. So do you want to add anything? Like, I think your behavior, your actions are speak a lot.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the advice that's been given already is really fantastic. I mean, I think I guess, in talking about that, I can talk about that selfie choreography project, but really fundamentally, I think it just comes down to play. And, I think what Sherry's talking about in terms of being proactive. And for me, there's this whole aspect of playing, which is about a particular kind of engagement with the world, a speculative engagement with the world, that I think an inquiring engagement with the world. I mean, the selfie choreography project, in a way, which is a workshop which I've sort of just developed. I was on a workshop, and I've sort of kind of was quite interested in how like selfie sticks now, which no one really uses, sort of like a kind of slightly redundant object, but was a huge phenomena at a particular moment. That was about facilitating, obviously taking images of yourself, and that selfie culture is an ongoing and much wider kind of sort of issue. But it sort of struck me that there were these kind of orthodoxies or certain ways of image making that were culturally inscribed, that led people to, you had to take a certain image of yourself in a certain light, certain pose, you had to use certain filters. I mean, all of this stuff that comes from influencers and stuff. And I just wanted to have an activity where it was sort of unpacking that a bit. So it's as a sort of workshop, it's really about thinking about this idea of self-imaging as a tool, really. And I think one of the things that I was sort of drawing from is there's a great history of contemporary artists misappropriating technology, which thankfully kind of continues, and I think is a really, really important part, and so this thing of really thinking about actually the technology is set up to do one thing, but what happens if we do something else? So one of the things with the workshop really is it's just about inviting people to think about the object and image making in different ways. So, one of the other ways in which we can take images with a stick, with a camera on the end of it, what happens if you start swinging it around? What happens if, you accidentally, you take an image of yourself? What happens if you're not in control of the images, so that you can't see the image of yourself, but you just take a random photo? I mean, there are all these, so yeah, really it was about this idea of kind of creating a space of kind of speculative play that unpacks and some of the kind of orthodoxies of the way that we are expected to use, a technology like, smartphones and taking selfies. So it's about adding playfulness, I think. But in a sense, I think that fits into what everyone else has been saying in terms of agency and being proactive, and but also other things, the soft things about being together with people, being convivial. Again, I mean, it's really great to hear Caitlin talking about this thing of not scrolling and eating with people. That's a fundamental thing. That sociability is so, to our well-being, is so kind of essential.
I feel, I just want to say something that basically, what you have expressed so beautifully, that we need to find ways of deprogramming yourself. Like, if you're being programmed to be a certain way, the tools that Sherry is sharing, or the project that you're mentioning, are different ways that I'm working with my collaborators. We're essentially talking about like an act of waking up, having that awareness, reprogramming your mind to just, because a lot of what essentially we're experiencing is so much about creating predictability programming, like, the more we behave in a predictable manner, the more vulnerable we are to manipulation. So to be able to just do that, it in itself can be such a source of power. And to first to be able to like do that, you need to see that there is something going on. And often for me personally as a practice, like I just need to check in with myself, like, hey, how are you feeling right now? What's going on? Often, like if I'm overwhelmed or something, I'm just going to quickly start writing out. And the first line I always write, what is going on right now? What are you actually feeling? And okay, where is that coming from? And then you kind of like feel the feelings. I call that FTF. We have that in our house, just like feel the feelings. And then you kind of move on, and like FTFing is really important. Like and like not, because as some of that stuff like is just, whether it's anxiety or depression or they're just so hard, like not the chronic kind of stress, but the more like, some things that the more like the ones that come, the feelings and emotions that come as like waves, those you just need to kind of just feel them, and then they'll pass. And then I'm sure like, Sherry's like, of course, but that's where you just kind of, not be judgmental of how you're feeling, like it is normal, and just move from there, I think is
that's so beautifully said. Yes, I think definitely, especially here, a lot of times people are too in a hurry to labeling how we feel instead of really being, like you said, pause or deprogram or take time to really feel and let them coming out from like this your body and mind.
I just want to add that actually labeling feelings is super, super helpful. So that's a good thing. Like to be able to just use a word like, oh, I am actually feeling disappointed.
Guidance.
Yeah, like that is just one of like the biggest ways of, I would say, of like building emotional intelligence, to be able to like, all right, I'm disappointed, I'm jealous, I'm envious, I am, excited, I'm whatever. Like I have this, I have a wall of like emotions and feelings charts that is part of like, so I'm always kind of referring to it. I was like, I wonder, I don't know how to name quite what's going on. It feels too blobby and mushy, and it's like, I don't know what's happening. And this is something that I personally used to struggle with a lot, and I still do it as an artist, human person living in this world, where you just like, you come out of social media, like, this just doesn't feel right. Like something happened, but I don't know what it quite is. So just kind of like that emotional granularity, then you have that intelligence to say like, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. And that step is saying like, okay, this belongs, this is here. All right, it's going to pass. And then you move on to the next thing, then you accept, and then you kind of do that positive work. But it's like, it really starts with FTF. Hashtag.
Yes.
I just wanted to add,
please.
I want to add to something Sarabhi said with that. When you're on social media a lot, you don't get the emotional validation that you really need to grow and to be healthy. And so when you go off to school next year to another country, it's really important to make connections, make friends with people that might be out of your comfort zone. Don't just stay with the same group of people you know from back home. And I'm speaking from my heart because I was an international exchange student, and I'm still friends today with people I knew 40 years ago from different cultures. Caitlin goes to an international school, and one of the things that we see is a problem is when students do go abroad, but they don't make friends or connections with people. And this is this wonderful gift you have to make friends and meet people from around the world who can help you understand who you are and give you that love and give you feedback and validate your emotions in a way that you'll never get on technology. So, build a support system and make your support system diverse different people, not just the people you know. Get out of your comfort zone. That's how you grow.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Serapio, for letting us know this labeling and continuously feeling and letting interchanging and share his idea about this being connected and building the support system. And I just feel we're about to come to an end soon, and I just want to say thank you so much. And this is just amazing to have, like, we were talking about issues of social media and digital technology, but at the same time, like, it also gives us opportunities like this to having a conversation and to really send out a message to the people who might be in their room or like in wherever they are right now, facing and confronting challenges and difficulties. And I just want to I received a text message from our team right now. Tonight we have over 1,000 viewers.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes.
That's amazing.
Yes, and
That's amazing.
thank you so much for your generosity, your knowledge, and your time. I feel really touched that like we can have this, and I'm sure that it definitely, this little conversation is the first step, like raising discussions, letting people know that they're not alone, and it's not their own problems, right? It's not the self, it's the environment sometimes that's disempowering us, and we need more game, we need to play, we need to understand, to take proactive actions, like facing this. Like, anxiety won't go away, like Serapio said, but it's interchangeable, and it probably can turn it into something more formative. So I'd like to thank you again, and just a little preview from next week. We're going to have 4 other panelists, 4 other artists: Naomi Campbell, Lee Davis, Sarah Hall, and Han Qing, talking more of the approaching anxiety and transforming anxiety. But this is such a great start, and thank you. And I hope that you're all well, like while we're here, right? Like, I want to be well, and I want my loved ones to be well. I want all of you to be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
It's lovely.
Bye.